Hello and welcome back to HEMAFightBreakdowns. Today I want to talk about this guard. This is an unusual guard that you don't see a lot, but it is in a couple of sources, I think primarily Italian ones. And primarily I want to talk about this because not enough people talk about what a guard really accomplishes and what mechanical advantages and disadvantages you get from them. I think a lot of people are just taught their guards right off the bat, and there's not a huge amount of a discussion about what they do, what they're for, and why they are that way. And this brings an opportunity to talk about one, an unusual guard that you're not going to see a lot, and two, to talk about why you take a guard like this and why you don't take a guard like this for the purposes of dealing with it if for some reason you see it or want to use it. So the first thing to point out is that the premise of this guard, and it's not exactly obvious what's going on here, but that this person's left hand is facing up. Their palm is up towards the sky, and they're gripping only the pommel. And this has a couple of advantages. One is that it gives them, like any grip low down the guard does, a lot of tip control. For those who don't know, in a two-handed weapon, your right hand doesn't really do a whole lot except give structure and guide the overall direction. But your left hand, your backhand, if you're right-handed, deals entirely with your tip. If you want to imagine that you're holding a sword in your hand or a stick, whatever, every single time you move your left hand, your tip moves, a significantly larger amount in the opposite direction of wherever your left hand goes. If you move your right hand a bunch without your left hand moving, you don't get that same tip control. So the idea here is that you create a pivot point with your right hand, which is usually a lot closer to the point of balance. You manipulate your tip with your left hand. And far more importantly, you choke back a lot on it and raise the point at which your crossguard is sitting. Now, if you first look at this, the first thing you might think is, oh, the underside of the arms is exposed. And that's not entirely untrue. But the problem with that I think a lot of people have when they first see a guard like this is that they wrongly think that these low openings are good to go for. And the reason they're not good to go for is because of the other thing that this guard does, which is keep the sword directly at the level of the shoulder, which is going to give it maximum reach. And it's keeping that tip forward and in a mechanical straight line position. Now, what you want to imagine, the reason this is an advantage is because if both of these people were to stab at each other, there are really only two outcomes. The first is that from this plow position, the sword goes up underneath the arms into the chest, whereas this one will go up over the arms and into the chest. The problem is that geometrically, this thrust is going to have significantly longer range than this one. And that's because if you go back to basic high school math, this line has a lot more distance to travel to reach its target, because in order to extend the arms, they have to go forward and up to reach the level of the shoulder. All these arms have to do is go straight out. The other important thing is that target selection is going to cause a big disadvantage. With this particular position, the only thing you can stab is the arms if you're extraordinarily accurate, or the lower parts of the chest. Since thrusts don't come from the lower parts of the chest, it's entirely simple for the person over here in this guard to suck in their gut and just extend their arms and their shoulders out and gain significantly higher distance than this person, because they can land on the shoulders, again, that place where all thrusts have to come from mechanically, put it right at the closest target, the one thing that you have to move in order to gain extra distance, so it is basically going to pin you there. And then as you're trying to come in with that thrust, you're going to get stuck, you're going to get stabbed first, and it's very likely that they're going to be able to stab you without getting stabbed back at all. The other thing that people will probably try to do is undercuts to these arms. And in a lot of ways, you can deal with it the exact same way. With this mechanically longer and more structured position, or I guess more direct position, you can just thrust anytime someone tries to go low on you. Because again, in order to get to you, they have to leverage the fact that they're aiming for these lower targets, these further away targets mechanically. Because again, you have to lean over, you have to extend your arms downward to swing your sword downward. So you're going to have a steeper angle and a longer distance, despite the fact that you're both at the same distance. So That is there. Now, if this person was in a Vomtog or a point up and a point away guard, there would be another thing that this guard is looking to accomplish, and that is to be able to go into a cron quickly. So if you're sitting here and your cross guard is essentially at the level of your shoulder already, whereas here it's down by your hip, it's very simple to just pull that tip up with your backhand by lowering your left hand, pointing your tip up in the air and just raising your right hand, 5-6 inches to cover your head. And that gives you a bit of a mechanical speed and advantage in covering the targets that, again, people are very likely to go for. Now, as for where this guard runs into some trouble, whenever you have your left hand on the bottom, you're creating a very, very long lever. And the problem with having a very long lever is that it's a shitty pun, double-edged sword. The more leverage you put over your own sword, the more leverage you also give someone else over your hand and your sword if they choose to engage with your blade. If this person were to pull up their guard and then put their sword on this other person's sword, they would have both hands structured, locked with elbows, lats, back, shoulders, everything engaged, and they'd be virtually immovable from that position. Whereas this person pretty much just has their hands and wrists to structure behind this sword. If you whack this sword for whatever reason with like a Zornhau or just a clearing cut or a deflecting cut, it's going to go wherever you hit it because there is no physical way to structure yourself against it. It's just your hands. It's just your wrist. You can't do that. What they're going to try to do, obviously, instead, is every time you go to swing at their blade, they're going to try to use their quick point control to dip and duck their hands so that they can keep their tip out of your way. But that's, again, very difficult to do when you're in a point forward guard and your sword is all the way out there. So that's the advantages and disadvantages. If you're ever looking to try this guard out yourself, what I will tell you right now is that you have to be very, very comfortable with thrusting. You have to be very, very comfortable with dipping your point and avoiding the bind. And you have to be very, very comfortable with basically thrusting whenever someone threatens your lower line. But if you can do all of those things and you can keep all of that safe, you're going to find success with this guard. If you're looking to beat this guard, what you really need to do is you need to engage them in a bind. You need to take your own long point guard and you need to play tip games and bind games with them because that's the one thing they're going to have a lot of trouble doing. The further out your sword is, the more you're reducing that mechanical length advantage that they're giving themselves while keeping your own arms in a structured, stable position so that you're pretty much guaranteed to win binds unless they switch out of it. All right. Sorry for basically talking over a static image, but I need some more, people to send in videos. And if you're looking to send in your own videos, you can send them at HEMAFightBreakdowns@gmail.com. And I really hope you do that. See you next time.